I still have the entire layout powered by the CSB1, and ever since I installed it, it's been running perfect. However, this is the last video I'm going to make about the CSB1 powering this layout. And I can't say I'll miss being on my hands and knees down here, actually thighs and elbow pretty much, holding the camera one-handed to film this. But what I've been really impressed with this, right from the moment I first started playing with it, is its instant plug and play-ness. You don't need a computer, you don't need your own home network for it to connect to. It starts up, it offers a connection for your devices, and off you go. And then it supports the life cycle of your layout, right from that first time you run a train up to full automation, controlling turnouts and all that kind of stuff through its either all of the onboard connectivity it has for, you can run servos from it, you can run automation from it, or through a USB connection, running JMRI and having this act effectively as your command station and booster. And I'm going to cover that today, but I'm also going to cover why, when I've finished making this video, I'm going to give this CSB1 away. Now, when Sam from CMME Chesterfield contacted me with his kind offer to supply the CSB1 for review, he was also very generous in that he said that once I'd finished with it, I was welcome to keep it or I was welcome to pass it on. And it just happens that I know someone who's right at the start of building a new layout who would, I think, really benefit from having that CSB1 and having it there as his layout grows. And that person is Simon, who has been really kind of instrumental in me starting the scenic development of this layout, and who also designed, laser cut and sent me the arches and buildings for the street scene that's in the foreground there. Now I am going to get on to the purpose of this video in a minute, which is going through the basics of getting a CSB1 connected up to a computer, getting JMRI installed on that computer, and using the kind of the real basic non-automation related functionality of JMRI, which is DecoderPro. And DecoderPro just focuses on giving you throttles for your trains and giving you a really intuitive user interface for programming CVs, whereby you don't need to ever think about CV numbers or values, anything like that. You just get a little Windows interface and you click boxes and you program your trains that way. But before I do that, I am just going to be a little bit self-indulgent and spend a little time on a shameless plug for my friend Simon's new YouTube channel. Now, his layout is where the CSB1 is going to go. And I really am quite excited and interested in where his layout's going to go, so I'm going to share a link to it. I mean, Simon, for example, those two BR signs, the acrylic BR signs behind the monitors there, they're his work. He sent me home with them last time I visited him. And that was the same visit where I turned up with an LCD or an LED screen and a few knobs, and within a few hours he had designed the casing for what has become the knob box. And like I said before, all of this street scene, the arches and everything were his idea and conception, and he built them. The unit that he's building his layout in and filming from, he doesn't kind of go into this, but he's up on like a mezzanine floor that I think he's built himself for the layout. But downstairs is where he's got his tools, his laser cutters. He's got 3D printer down there. And all of this is built, and he actually built this street scene in that unit and was sending me videos, which I'll include screenshots from here. But yeah, it's a bit of a shameless plug, but I think it really is a channel to watch and keep an eye on and see what he does, because he's quite humble, I think, in the videos he's made so far about what he's doing, but there's a heck of a lot to come. Well, back onto the business of this video anyway, and the reason why I'm happy to give the CSB1 away is a couple of months before CMME sent me the CSB1 to test, I'd actually already bought the DCC-EX motorboard from them, and this is, again, is a 5 amp capable motorboard for running the layout. It's kind of in some ways the bare bones of the CSB1, I think, but it sits on top of an Arduino, connects to a PC. It doesn't have, without adding boards to it, extra boards to it, it doesn't have the Wi-Fi capability, but it's perfect for my needs because the computer that it's going to connect to, that's already up in the loft, is already connected to my home network, and therefore is capable of providing the Wi-Fi connectivity through WeThrottle, very similarly to how the CSB1 uses it. So if I was to stick with the CSB1, it would work perfectly for me. It's just that I wouldn't use the features on it that are additional to what's already on this board here. Back down on my hands and knees again for absolutely the last time with the camera. I absolutely promised myself. Let's get this CSB1 connected up to a computer, and the simple process of that is using a USB-C cable, which I think is the standard charging cable for most mobile phones these days, connected to the USB-C socket that's just on the right hand side there of the CSB1, and plugging it into the back of a computer. Now, what I'm going to do at this point, because obviously the computer that I've just connected this thing to, or that it is connected to, already has JMRI installed and all the drives and things, so I'm going to whip this thing out. I'm going to take it to a computer that has never had JMRI installed, never seen a device like this, and just go through the starting from scratch installation process for it. Starting right at the beginning then, I've simply plugged in the CSB1 into effectively a new PC, a PC that's recently been built, had Windows installed on it. It's never seen an Arduino, it's never seen the Arduino IDE, never seen JMRI, never seen an ESP, anything like that. It's a pretty clean build, and the good news is, looking at this entry here in Device Manager, the computer Windows has recognized enough effectively the ESP device that's inside the CSB1. So this is good news. I don't need to install any drivers. I can go straight on to installing JMRI. Quickly onto JMRI then, and if I Google simply JMRI, very quickly get to this link. I can go straight to the downloads page here, which is very handy. Now, a massive prerequisite of Java, the J of JMRI, sorry, the J meaning Java, is we need Java installed on the PC before JMRI will work, and that is not installed on this fresh PC build. So if we scroll down the download page right at the bottom, there's a link there, how to install Java. I'm on Windows. There are various tutorials for different operating systems as well, but strangely, and I don't think I even know the reasons why to go into, the actual official Java packages no longer work. So they have this link to something called Azul here, which is the one I use. They have an alternative one there as well, but this is the one I've used and that works. So I click on this and download free. It's telling me it's the 64-bit version, so I'm just going to simply click download. And have I got anything? How to install? Should start shortly. Here it is. It's downloading now, and shouldn't take very long. There we go. It will turn into a little download, and let's install Zulu. And it has installed on the other. It's started on the other monitor, so I'll drag it over. Just gonna go with all the defaults. And it popped up a little confirmation. Do I want to install this on the other monitor? There we go, nice and quick. Let's go back. We now want JMRI. So back. And we'll go for the production release, latest production release, which appears to be 5.10. There's no need for test releases at the minute. So I'm going to go for the Windows version of JMRI 5.10. And that has gone straight to a download up there.
let's let that finish. There we go, and run this. I always see this. I guess it's to do with official Microsoft signing and that kind of thing. I always click run anyway, and I've never had any problems. Just had again a confirmation on another monitor. I'll drag this over now. Again, just go with the defaults. JMRI. See here, it's checking to make sure at this point that I've got a compatible version of Java installed, which I guess I hope I will have. Yep, seems happy. And I've very probably just skipped or speeded up about, I don't know, 10-20 seconds of installation progress bar. Now finished, and let's see if it works. It has installed some. If I just drag this over slightly onto the monitor that's recording, see it's added a couple of icons here. The one I'm really interested in to start with, I'm not going to worry about Panel Pro yet. DecoderPro is slightly misleading in its name. It does enable you to program decoders, but it also enables you, it's where your roster, it's the easiest way to get to your roster and to build a roster of trains, which is what we're interested in to start with. So I'm going to double click this DecoderPro, and it's looking good. And I've got to a setup wizard, which is encouraging. Let's just clear everything from here. Little wizard, God, I've never seen this before, so let's have a look. That's all standard. Set up my DCC connection, so I think it's is it still DCC++ that you list in here, and DCC++ serial port. Serial port was 3. I've just closed the device manager actually, but it was on there. That's the port that is it CH340 or something like that. That's what I want to be looking for. In fact, let's do it just in case anyone gets to this point and is not sure. So here's device manager, and if I go to ports, I'm looking for this one, USB serial CH340, and it tells me there it's on COM3. So I'm simply selecting COM3 there. I can leave the rest blank. Oh, there we go. Finish. And it's run. DecoderPro, and this is kind of the default. It's telling me there's lots of green down here, which is good news. It's telling me it's connected to the device. And actually, at this point, there's no point me using the fresh install PC because it's nowhere near my layout. So I'm going to switch to the PC that already has JMRI installed and is next to the layout now.
Back up here in the loft then, I'm going to run DecoderPro. And in order to differentiate, there's no point in loading all of the big existing config I have for my existing network. So I've created a new profile up here to kind of pick up from where we left off in the last video. So I'm quickly going to go through this setup wizard, which will be exactly the same as was before. So I may well skip this bit in the video. And we end up with this welcome screen, which is really the start point of being able to add locos, control them, and program them. A good place, and probably the usual place to start, would be to add a new loco to the roster. So I've put the motor car from the Hornby Class 101 down on the programming track, and I'm now going to add it into my roster. And straight back to the computer, and here's our new JMRI installation. So I'm going to go straight up, and I'm going to click on New Loco. This brings up, I'm still on multiple monitors, and it's all popping up on the wrong one, so I'm going to have to do a bit of dragging and dropping. And it's asking me what the decoder type is. Now, it's not essential to get the right decoder type. It just helps, because when we come to programming decoders, there are all kinds of profiles that lay out the programming window differently based on the type of decoder we've got. So I'm just going to read the type, and I don't know if the microphone picked that up, but the Loco's doing its shuffling, and it found that it's a Hatton's, unsurprisingly, because I usually go for the cheap ones, and the only option there is a MD4. Now, what it's picked up here is already picked up that the address that's already programmed on that decoder is 101. If it was a new decoder, this value would likely be 3, and I could set it to the value that I would like. I can also set whether it will respond to DC operation. And the last thing I would do is add a name. I'm going to do this messily because I've only got one hand without capital letters, but let's call it class 101. And for the time being, save that. And immediately the welcome screen's disappeared, and I now have a Loco in my roster. I'm now presented with really quite an interesting button, this Open Comprehensive Programmer button. Now I'm not actually going to click this. This would open the programmer, but what I can do is just close this down so that I can see my roster here. But I can still get to that what it calls the Comprehensive Programmer by clicking on there. And again, I've just gone to the wrong screen, so I need to drag this over. And here is a tabbed window of all the different ways I can program this train. And it's not just about how I program it, it's also about how it's currently programmed, because okay, I got a bit stuck there, but I've just noticed what I was expecting was buttons here so that I could read what the values actually are, because these are just kind of, by default, these are guessed values. It doesn't know what these values are, so these are the sort of default values that it would come with. I'm just going to close this because I expected buttons to be here and they're not here, so I'm going to close this, and down here looks like I've got a default setting that's not quite right. So I know that the program I want, the Loco, the decoder I want to program is on the programming track. So I'm going to select that button and then see if, when I open this up again, I get different, a slightly different window in that I get buttons, and I'm hopefully these are the buttons that I'm talking about. So, for example, with basic, like I said, these are the default values that it has guessed are right. So I can click on this button that's read full sheet. And there we go, and it was very quick actually. It's read. So now every value that is on this page is the value that was read from the decoder, and I can do that for every page. These are its basic settings. Let's go and see how the motor's configured. So let's again read the full sheet. You see, as it reads the values, they change, the background changes from yellow to white, and this is how this is. And again, these are things that I wouldn't. It's not. Sometimes I think the bit of study I've done on programming CVs, it's not just understanding which CV to program. It's also sometimes having to calculate a value, and I know that was certainly something when I was playing with consists, and this was a long time ago on the last layout, and I'm not going to start doing this again, but I will post a link to where I was playing with it before many years ago, and I think advanced consists would have been really quite difficult to program. For example, I used consists when I used the old Hornby class 43s from the 80s, and I had a lot of coaches in between them, so I had a motor car on each end, and I programmed both of those motor cars to act as a consist so that they would both respond to the same DCC ID, one going forwards, one going backwards, and that was all done up here. But again, there's all these options that I don't need to know the CVs for. Like basic speed control, let's see what it's doing. I'm thinking it'll probably just be at default. So it's got a little bit of start voltage, so I must have thought that train needed a bit of help to get started at low speed. There's also, if I wanted to, there's this massive speed table where I can control very much what its speed curve is. It's not, I imagine if I read this, it is not currently using this value, but it's not currently using this speed table. But you can see just slightly that the sliders are just changing their position a little bit, where that's indicating that the current setting on the decoder is slightly different to what the anticipated default was coming from JMRI. So I'll just let those finish now, and there are some really useful buttons. If for whatever reason, a straight speed curve or the speed curve that it comes with isn't quite right. Sometimes what I've found is, for example, trains can really start too slowly, and sometimes it helped me if I kind of go to shift left, keep shifting left. You can see these values go up, so it will start at a higher voltage, and that's made it look a bit messy. But then what I can do is click match ends, so that it then has a nice, so that would start at a much higher voltage but then have the same gradual increase in speed until it got to the top. There's also, I think, something called a log curve, but it's starting, of course, from that point. I'm sure there's a sort of return to default there, and also what would happen with this if we shift them all right again. I think that will, oh look, that hasn't done what I wanted to do. But I guess the easy way to return it to defaults would be to start at the bottom, end at the top, and match ends, and there we go. That's given us a nice curve again, and I could program that and it would click there. In fact, yeah, I could click the right changes, and as long as we were using that table, it would take notice of it. But another nice thing, once I've done all this editing, and if I close it down, again, it's happened on another screen, but it's asking me if I want to save all the changes I've made into JMRI. And what that means is next time I open it up, and hang on, we've got another one there, save and close, yeah. Next time I open this up, rather than having to read all those values from the motor again, they have now been saved into the config file. So every time I open this, I'm seeing how the train is actually configured, which helps if I need to make some tweaks to it. I do now have JMRI running, and I have a roster, albeit of just one loco, and I can actually drive that train from here. If I right click and click on throttle, again, it's opened it on the wrong monitor, so I have to drag it over. It gives me a throttle here, it gives me the function buttons, and there's no track power, so nothing's going to move, which is kind of okay for now. But I've got a little slider here. I can set the speed to what I want. I'm sure there'll be a stop button somewhere, there'll be a reverse somewhere, and I can move it in reverse, and this would drive the train. So I do immediately end up with a way of controlling my trains. However, standing at a computer using a mouse isn't the way most people want to. Because of the connectivity that mobile phones offer us, it's much nicer to have something we can carry around with us. So the next step is to replicate the functionality of at least almost replicate the functionality of the standalone CSB1 box by enabling a server within JMRI called WeThrottle, which will then allow us to connect directly to the computer instead of the CSB1 and control trains through a phone using the same app, engine driver, but connecting to the PC to do it rather than the CSB1. So now I have my loco in my roster, and I want to be able to control that loco through my phone or a similar device using, in my case, engine driver, because I use Android. So in order to do that, I need to have an app called WeThrottle running. But also, it's really important to mention, I also need to have this PC connected to the same network as that the phones and devices will connect to. Usually that just means my home network. So it happens that the PC I'm using is connected to my home network through an Ethernet cable, and the devices, the phones, will connect through the Wi-Fi, and that's all done by the router that comes with my from my ISP. The computer can be connected through Wi-Fi as well. In a lot of cases, if I was using a laptop to run JMRI and to control it, then the laptop may well be connected through Wi-Fi to my home network, and that would work provided that the devices, the phones, the tablets, also connected to that same network. So with that prerequisite in place, I need to get WeThrottle running. And what I'd do is I go to Edit and I'd go to Preferences, and within this Preferences window, there is a WeThrottle, which I've already got selected here because I came and had a look already. There's a WeThrottle section, and that just has all of the defaults. This is an important part of it that we'll come back to later, a port number of 12090, and there's an option here actually to start automatically with application, which we may well want because we want WeThrottle to run all the time that JMRI is running, so that we can connect our throttles to it. So that's the only change I'm going to make there. I'm going to save my preferences, and there's a little window come up here asking if I want to restart. So let's restart. So now with JMRI started, WeThrottle has started automatically with the application, which is really good because it means that JMRI is now listening for connections from mobile phones, from engine driver, from which throttles can be controlled. The one thing to be aware of at this point is, although it's all set up and it's all waiting, connections may still not be possible, and they may not be possible because the Windows firewall by default will block connections to the WeThrottle port. So in order to alleviate that and get the Windows firewall to allow connections through the port, I'm just gonna have to switch to a manual view again because I'm sharing the wrong desktop. We come over to the start menu and just simply type in firewall. We should be able to see, there we go, Windows Defender Firewall with Advanced Security, and I'm going to run that, and that opens the firewall application, which I'm just going to drag back onto the screen that's being shared. And we're looking for, now probably there already is an inbound rule for that, but I'm not going to worry about that. We'll just imagine that there isn't. I'm going to click on New Rule, which again is opened on the wrong monitor, so I'm going to drag it over here, and I need to enable a port. I'm going to click Next. The WeThrottle port is a TCP port, so I'm going to leave that enabled. And earlier in the preferences, we saw that the default port that WeThrottle runs on is 12090. So I'm just going to type that in there, and then I'm going to allow the connection. I'm going to leave all those three connected, and we're just going to call it whatever we need to call it, WeThrottle, without typos, and finish. And there we go, that rule has been added, and that should now allow us to connect to WeThrottle from mobile devices. And actually, just one more quick tip to do with rosters, something I certainly use is my main roster. I'm back on the main profile now, and my kind of default roster is full of quite a bit of clutter because there's different consists, there's ends of consists, and there are trains in there, like all the old kind of 1980s ones that I still own, but I very rarely use and aren't on the layout. But it ends up being quite a big, messy roster list. And can clutter up certainly the view on say a phone or on the knob box. So what I've done is I've created a roster group, and I called it usable. And all I do, for example, say if I wanted to use this APT, I can get hold of it. It doesn't always work, but there we go. Get hold of it, drag it into usable. I'm not going to drop it in there because I have to remove it again. And I therefore, let's cancel that thing that came up, end up with a list of the locos that I use regularly and is quite ordered and neat. And you create as many roster groups as you like. It's in settings, and there's a create roster group option there. But what I then end up with, if I go and bring WeThrottle up, is in the WeThrottle window there is a roster group option here, and I could, by default it'll be all entries, but if I select, as I have done, usable, which is the roster group I created, then only the entries that are in that group are offered to any Wi-Fi clients, which just keeps it nice and neat and ordered. Back to this phone then that I've been using for this testing, and I've turned it on, and I've come to run engine driver. I can just hit that, and what it's found, of course, is it still wants to connect to the DCC-EX box, because that box is still running a Wi-Fi network. The reason why it wants to connect that is because it's still on that Wi-Fi network that the DCC-EX, the CSB1, is running. So I'm going to exit this. I need to kind of work at a funny angle because I need to be able to see the screen. And if I find my settings, which are there, I'm going to change the network. So where we have Wi-Fi, I can see there it's still on that DCC-EX Wi-Fi, but I'm going to put it on my home network. And it's connecting and it's having a think, and there we go. So I'm interested now to see if I now run Engine Driver. There we go. Instead of the DCC-EX one, that's now a recently used but not visible one. The one that's now visible and the IP address matches the IP address of the computer. So if I just somehow try and click this, and there we go. It was just me being slow. So we're now controlling the locomotives through JMRI and through WeThrottle rather than through the DCC-EX CSB1. So there are a few differences. If I drop this menu down, there is no facility to set CVs, for example, because the WeThrottle protocol doesn't support that, whereas the DCC-EX one does. But that's kind of okay, because I find programming CVs, programming decoders, to be more intuitive and a little bit more straightforward using the computer. Additionally, if I click select here and go to server roster, there's my class 101. So an advantage of using JMRI and WeThrottle, certainly over the CSB1 direct, is that as I add trains to my roster, they automatically appear in Engine Driver. I don't need to do any uploads. I don't need to do any reinstalls or anything like that. They will be populated on this roster as soon as they're added to the roster in JMRI. And it's worth adding, of course, that the WeThrottle protocol, as I'm sure the DCC-EX protocol does as well, supports more than just the Engine Driver app. Anyone can write apps that connect to JMRI and control trains via the WeThrottle protocol, and that's the protocol I've used for the knob boxes here. So as long as, again, WeThrottle is running on JMRI, there are all kinds of accessories that can be put together that will control trains remotely from the computer. And really, that's it. I will get this CSB1 disconnected now. I'm going down to Simon's in a couple of weeks, so I'll take that down with me and maybe make a video with him of getting it set up for him and getting him running trains for the first time, which I think will be quite interesting. It's been a good learning experience with the CS1 for me. I am really impressed with it, and again, I think the word I keep coming back to is life cycle. It will support the life cycle of a layout from that first train running right up to all kinds of automations and complex layouts with lots of locos running on them, and it sits there and it happily gets on with its job. There are advantages and disadvantages, I think, to using it direct. There's the complication of adding named locos in the roster, whereas if you go through the pain of getting JMRI installed and the whole WeThrottle process, then you get locos added to the roster automatically. I would have liked to have got a PCA 9685 board connected to that CSB1, because it has connectors for it, and get a few servos running off it. But again, that would have only ever been on a test bed, because I've got my servos running a different way here. But certainly, I think for a smaller layout, the facility to be able to run a few servo motors and change points off that CSB1 is a very strong feature. So yeah, I'll get it disconnected, get the old one back on, and get this one to its new home.